One of them is information. And this is, I think nowadays, it can be just as dangerous as food and like eating, just like overeating can destroy your body. Over binging on information can destroy your mind, and your spirit and your body. Because they all come together, man. Your mind, body, and spirit, they link. When you're messing up your mind and stressing yourself out, your body's going to feel that effect. Those of you that work in the NHS will probably be more aware of the statistics, which directly relate to this, of how that when somebody's stressed out, that can mean that they're ending up in hospital. When somebody's out of touch with their spirit, that means that they're ending up in hospital. So these things come together very, very closely, man. So the reason I bring information up, and this is probably something the Prophet ﷺ or the Quran didn't mention as much, is because nowadays we live in a time where we all have these things called mobile phones. And they weren't around at the time. Like at the time of the Prophet, Google wasn't invented. So all the information in the world hadn't actually been organized. So now the problem is that we live in a world where we can, we sometimes think that we don't have control on what information we choose to allow into our system. Yeah, even though we do. And this problem is very often caused by the way news is portrayed to us as we grow up. Like, especially in our culture, man. Like, we grow up and we taught, like, the most important thing you can do with your time after, all your bare necessities is to watch the news. And if somebody's watching the news, if one of the elders of the household is watching the news, like, everyone else has to be quiet because this is a very important action. So I'm talking about, slightly elder times. So this is pre-smartphone era. Now we've got smartphones. Now, obviously, I have some control on my phone, but my wife. So with her phone, when I look at her phone by accident, she for some reason has all the news coming in, like how many people have died from the coronavirus today, and that's like comes up as a notification on her phone, and I'm like, why is this going on? So obviously, I change her settings and stuff when all that happens. But I know with a lot of people, they don't think there's anything wrong with binging on the news all day. Like every time you pick up your phone, or like the amount of times we pick up our phone is too much in the first place. But then when you pick it up and you're getting the news about how many people are dying and what's going wrong and how we all need to start panicking, when you have that information, like even just thinking about it now, I feel like I need to go to the hospital. but I mean, watching too much news is really not good. And I think sometimes in the age that we live in, we think that we don't have control on what information we choose to allow into our life. Whereas we do. Like, it's completely up to you. Just like you choose what you put in your mouth, you choose what you put in your brain as well. You choose what you choose to learn about, what information. Like, if you choose to become an expert on politics and the news and what's going wrong in the world, then that's it's a conscious decision which you make. So I think it's important to bring awareness to that because it's Ramadan. I know many of the people that I work with, some of the clients who stay in touch with me. I do definitely recommend this, but you actually spend some time away from your phone. Maybe fix a 4-hour block every day where you're not allowed to touch your phone. Just switch it off, and not when you're sleeping. Like whilst you're awake, trying to block out 2, 3, maybe start with 5 minutes. Like, I actually have some clients who I work with, and they fail. Like I say, why don't you turn your phone off, or just turn your phone off and turn it straight back on. No worries. And they struggle, man. Not struggle, they can't do it. They find it absolutely impossible. Now, I'm not saying everyone has such a big problem. But I know some of you are probably thinking, this is all under control. I'm not addicted to my phone. But we live in a society which definitely does have this problem. So if the idea of turning your phone off for 2 hours is scary, maybe that's something you should consider practicing and building up towards. And maybe in Ramadan, especially because we're fasting, it's even more important to be able to. Because if you're fasting from food and trying to control yourself, and instead of getting a dopamine hit by eating a biscuit or eating some fruit or from sugar, you're just going to get your dopamine and cortisol all to come from your phone instead. Then you're not really fasting. Then you're just getting it from a different source. So I think it is important to bring that awareness to what it is that we're fasting from, and actually being aware of what information we allow to come in, and organizing that as well. Like, what are you learning about at the moment? What are you educating yourself about at the moment? On a daily basis, what do you learn about? What do you bring attention towards? And the reason that there's such a need for gratitude in the world at the moment, the reason that nearly everyone, without exception, needs to engage in gratitude practices is because usually when you turn the news on, the question is what's going wrong? How many people have died? Why do we need to panic? Why do we all need to go and hide in the bomb shelter? But when we flip it around and do a gratitude exercise, we say, instead of asking what's going wrong, why do we need to panic, we say what's going right, and why do we need to smile, and why do we need to be happy? And when you ask those questions, then the whole chemistry in your brain, just by asking those questions, the chemistry in your brain will flip. So that's why I went on a bit longer on that rant than I expected, man. But I think just being aware of what information you allow into your brain, and the magical thing that does is it brings attention to what you're educating yourself on. Are you educating yourself at all? And if you are educating yourself, now you're going to have a list of what courses am I doing, how am I educating myself, how am I becoming a better human being, how am I becoming more educated? And that's always very, very important, man. And if as a result of that 15-minute lecture, you decide that you're going to do a gratitude course, which would be a very, very sensible thing to do indeed, what will happen, hopefully, if you're doing from a sensible gratitude course, you'll realize that you also consume oxygen. And I know some of you scientists out there will be like, you don't consume oxygen. The air is full of nitrogen and all these other things. I don't know what it is. I'm not some scientist. But basically, you're breathing. Yeah. So how do you take the air into your body and how do you take it out? Bringing awareness there is also very, very important. And when you do that, when you bring a bit of attention to your breath, for those of you that have been doing this, you'll realize that makes you more aware of your thoughts. And sometimes when your thoughts are on autopilot, just like, for example, if picking up your phone is on autopilot, some of your thoughts might be on autopilot. There'll be sometimes a very vicious cycle of thoughts which are on autopilot. And when you lose control, very often, like even though it's Ramadan and Shaitan is locked up, but if before Ramadan Shaitan had been working on you for 20 years to put your thoughts into a vicious cycle so that whenever something happens, you automatically have devilish thoughts. You don't need the devil to actually be there. Sometimes it actually becomes on autopilot. So taking time out to actually just stop for a little bit and just get a bit of clarity on what are we thinking about, what kind of thoughts go through our mind, and are they devilish thoughts or are they angelic thoughts? And just take some time to try and differentiate between what's actually going on just in our mind. And those last 3 points actually follow on quite nicely. I didn't actually realize this before. I realized that now. But you'd realize that if you're taking in too much negative information, you're going to end up like not focusing on how you're breathing, and most of the thoughts are going to be out of control, and they might be very devilish, most of them. But if you control what information comes in, if you start asking the right questions, and you start maybe breathing with a bit more consciousness, you become aware of the thoughts, and suddenly that this plan of Shaitan just falls apart, because it just becomes naked, basically. It's clever, man. But yeah, man, that's why we should have awareness on our consumption. Gee, people, any questions?